Hello to all of our USIEA friends and family. I am sitting here with Coach Bruce Pearl. He is the coach of the Auburn men's basketball team, but more importantly, he is on the USIEA board of directors. So Coach, you just took your basketball team to Israel. I want to go back a couple of years. In 2019, you were in Israel with us, and that's the first time I heard you talk about this vision. So what gave you the idea to take your team?
Well, I think, Joan Leslie, the fact that we had this most amazing experience on our tour, and I just thought, I want to share. Who do I want to share it with? And I wanted to share it with my players.
So tell me a little bit. When you guys there was some tension on the ground. We had some rockets being launched out of Gaza.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that experience.
Sometimes people in this country say, well, why are we spending all this money defending Israel? Well, you know, every day in Israel, there's like tens of thousands of US citizens that are working and sometimes living in Israel. And our tax dollars were actually protecting me and the Auburn basketball team. Because let me tell you what happened. In Tel Aviv, we were enough distance away from Gaza that we had plenty of time and there wasn't a lot of activity. We saw the rockets, we heard the pops, we saw the smoke, and we were able to basically continue to play. We didn't have to leave Israel and come home because the Iron Dome was protecting us. It was protecting Israel. Oh yeah, 6 million Jews and 3 million Arabs that live right there in Israel, protecting all of us. And as importantly, it was allowing us to kind of continue to go about our work. And thank God, because more people didn't die, Israel didn't have to respond, which in turn would create more death. And so thank God for the Iron Dome and grateful for the United States support to protect Israel.
And it's such a small world because Ari Sasher, who is a policy advisor for USIEA, was the chief systems engineer of Iron Dome, and he was sitting in the crowd for one of the basketball games.
It was. And Ari was so proud that his, the system he helped design and is a huge part of his life was protecting all of us. And I think one of the things that was interesting is, yes, we got calls from parents like, when are you guys coming home? We understand that Tel Aviv's under attack. And in some ways it was. Our safety and security were never a threat. And so, it was amazing to be able to sort of live through that. And for all of our players and our staffs and the family back home to have an idea, this is what Israel's got to live through every day.
Yeah. Well, you've been to Israel several times. You've been with us twice to Israel. What was your biggest takeaway from this specific trip with your team?
I thought that, Israel delivers every time. I've been there 4 or 5 times and you're just thinking, well, you know what? I've seen it, I felt it. There's no way. You laugh and you cry every single day. When you're there, you laugh and you cry every day, sometimes several times a day. The thing that I was most pleased about, Joan Leslie, is that my guys were fully engaged. Even on days when we had games, they toured, they traveled, and the bottom line is, look, the Bible just comes alive. And so when the first day we're in the Mount of Olives and we're walking down through the Garden of Gethsemane, and you walk through the garden, it's not that big of an area. That's where Jesus was betrayed. It's right there. And so you feel like you're standing where he stood. And then you know that the path that they had to take him was up the sort of the mountainous walk to get through Lion's Gate. Lion's Gate is just a kind of a big doorway that maybe a car can go through. When we walk through that gate, we know Jesus walked through that gate. The city of David, where David's, palace was, just outside the city walls, the southern steps, all the places where he ministered and performed miracles in the Sea of Galilee. And we were right there. So it's just, the Bible comes alive. It changes the way you go to synagogue, temple, shul, or church for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you're never the same when you come back from Israel.
No.
And it's one of the few places that I say gets better every time you go.
Okay, that brings us together. It doesn't just divide us. Or learning so much about Jesus' entire life as a rabbi. And as a Jew, I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't separate us. That should bring us together. And as a basketball coach, that's my job, to bring people together.
People have such a concept of what Israel is like from afar. You hear Israel and there's a connotation to it. But how do you think your guys' perspective was changed? What was their biggest takeaway and greatest impact after seeing it for themselves?
Well, going overseas, the world becomes a smaller place. I think they got a feel for how proud the Jewish people are and grateful they are to have been able to fulfill God's promise, and that's return to the promised land. And that they don't take it for granted. I think they had to be impacted by 17, 18, 19-year-old kids serving in the military, willing to give their life for their country. I think if the leadership could all get on board and recognize that, look, these are just husbands and fathers and mothers and wives and kids trying to live in peace and trying to live in prosperity. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of USIEA's work. I think the work of USIEA is helping in that ministry and in that mission.
Thanks, Coach. Yeah, you hit on a really important topic there about going and seeing the truth of it, that it's just men and women on both sides trying to provide for their family. And it's so similar, you're taking your team of college basketball players, but it's so similar to what we do at USIEA with taking the Congress over there. It doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum of those groups, everyone goes to Israel and has this eye-opening experience about what it's actually like. And so that's one thing that I'm so grateful you did with your team, is just taking more people there to expose them to the truth. And then they come back and they're a new resource of information. Like, I see your guys posting on TikTok and everywhere, and they're educating everyone they know about Israel now. And it's exactly what we hope to do with the Congress.
We're not going to change the minds of people that have already made their mind up for one reason or another. The vast majority haven't made their mind up, or are willing to have an open mind, and unfortunately, they're not always hearing the truth. And so you don't have to throw any propaganda out there. You just go experience it. You just go live it. And then you can decide for yourself how you're going to feel. But I do agree with you, Joe Melissa. I do think people come back having loved it and having had a greater understanding that that peace is possible in the Middle East.
Well, Coach, thank you for everything you do for us, everything you do for the nation of Israel. You were one of the most unapologetic and fiercest advocates of Israel that I've ever met. So thank you.
Thank you.